Hello, today we're going to learn about perimeter. As a reminder, perimeter is the distance around a shape. In this first problem here, we have a rectangle. Now notice we have a length of 2 5/10 and we have a width of 25 hundredths. In order to find the perimeter, we need to add all sides of this rectangle. Now they only gave us the measurement of 2 sides. We need to make sure that we're adding not just these 2 sides, but the third and the fourth side as well. So the first thing I always do to any figure that's given to me, I try to label as many sides as possible. In this problem, I believe we will have all 4 sides labeled. Some problems you might have a missing value and you need to find that first before you find the perimeter. So part of a rectangle is that we know when we're given a rectangle, if we're given a length of 2 5 centimeters, the opposite side is also 2 5 centimeters. So notice 2 side lengths will be exactly the same. And if I know here that my width is 25 hundredths, then I know that this side length is also 25 hundredths centimeters as well. Now, the next step here is you need to add all 4 sides. Now, when I'm dealing with fractions, decimals, or maybe larger whole numbers for my perimeter, I like to take it into a few steps. So the first thing I'm going to do to find my perimeter is I'm going to add my 2 lengths. So I have 2 5/10 plus 2 5/10. And notice when I'm adding my decimals, I'm lining up every digit. The digits in my tenths place are on top of each other. My decimal points are on top of each other. And the digits in my ones place are on top of each other. Now I simply add, giving me an answer of 5. Now not 50, it's 5 because this decimal point here, I'm going to simply bring down in my answer. So my decimal point is between the digit in my ones place and the digit in my tenths place. Now I also like to highlight the sides that I'm doing, so I know that I added this side together and this side together, but I still have to do the other 2 sides. So now my next step here is I'm going to look at my widths, and I know I have 25 hundredths plus another 25 hundredths. Now I'm choosing to add, but you can also choose to do 25 hundredths times 2 as well. Either way works. So now notice again, I lined everything up nice and neat, rewriting this on scrap piece of paper, giving me an answer now of 50 hundredths. Now my next task is again just to confirm that I have all 4 sides, so I included this side and this side. But now I need to add all my lengths together and my widths. So I'm going to add 5. And I'm also going to add 50 hundredths. Now I'm going to add these placeholder zeros here just to make sure I'm nice, neat, and organized, showing that I have digits in my hundredths, in my tenths, and my ones place. Now, when I add everything together, taking it digit by digit, I'm left with 5 50 hundredths. Now 5 50 hundredths is not incorrect. In fact, that is absolutely a great answer. However, we know that 5 50 hundredths is also equivalent to 5 5/10. So please try to write your answer in the smallest possible form. 50 hundredths is correct, but you can also show that that's equivalent to 5/10, eliminating some of these extra zeros at the end. So your answer here is 5 5/10 centimeter is the perimeter around this rectangle. Now here we have a parallelogram. Now in my parallelogram, I notice I also have 4 sides. I'm also finding the perimeter as well. And I know in a parallelogram, if this side is 6 6/10, I know that the opposite side is also going to be the same measurement. Now my other side length that's given to me is 4 8/10. So if I know that this side is 4 8/10, the opposite side is also 4 8/10 as well. And notice these 2 sides here, the 2 4 8/10, they're parallel to one another. And same with the 6 6/10 as well, making this a parallelogram. Now, My next step is to add all four sides. Now again, I like taking it into an extra step. If you want to add all four numbers together, that's absolutely fine, but I like taking an extra step just to make sure I do not make any mistakes. Notice I'm adding these numbers together, and notice that I lined up all my digits. Now my last step when I'm adding decimals is to make sure I'm including my decimal in my answer choice, simply bringing this decimal point down between the digits in my ones and my tens place. Now 13 and 2/10 is not my final answer. I need to add my last two sides, which is 4 and 8/10 plus 4 and 8/10. Now I do 8 plus 8 is 16, and 4 plus 4 is 8 plus 1 is 9, and my last step, bring down my decimal point, giving me an answer of 9 and 6/10. Now my final step is let me add these two numbers together because I chose to break this up into a few steps, which I highly recommend that everybody is writing this down on scrap paper. The problems you will be completing involving perimeter will have decimals, will require you to be adding decimals together and recalling this knowledge. So now notice here I'm simply just adding my digits together. My last step here is including my decimal point in my final answer, giving me a perimeter of 22 and 8/10 millimeters. Now, my next problem here is I have a triangle. Now a triangle only has three sides, which means to find the perimeter, I'm only going to be adding three numbers together. So here, I notice all three sides are actually labeled, so I don't need to do anything. I don't have to relabel anything. I already am given all three side lengths. So now I could simply begin adding. Now when I'm adding these numbers together, I'm starting with 5 and 4/10, 4 and 5/10, and now I just have 6. And notice that 6 is a digit in my ones place. We have 6 holes. So you have to make sure you're putting that in the correct location when you are adding these digits. Notice 5 and 4 are my other digits in my ones place. So that 6 needs to be matched up with the 5 and 4 as well. And if you would like, you can also include a decimal point and a 0 just to make sure you have digits in every single spot before adding. You are welcome to do that. Now I add the digits in my tenths place. 5 plus 4 is 9. 6 plus 4 is 10, plus 5 is 15. And my last step here, I'm looking at my decimal point, and I'm simply bringing that down to my final answer, giving me an answer of 15 and 9/10 centimeters. Notice I added all three sides, and I know that all three sides here are included to help me find the distance around this triangle, which is also known as perimeter. Now my last step is I have another rectangle here. As a reminder for rectangles, the first thing I'm going to do is label all four sides. So if I know that the length here is 62 and 1/10, I know that this length is also 62 and 1/10 kilometers. And here I have 32 and 2/10 as my width. So the opposite width is also 32 and 2/10 kilometers. Now my next step, yes, these numbers may be a little bit larger, but it's still the same process. I'm going to start with my lengths and simply add 62 and 1/10 plus 62 and 1/10. And notice I'm trying my best to keep all my digits lined up before I'm adding. This is a problem where you need scrap paper. I'm taking each digit by digit, and last but least in my tens place, 6 plus 6 is 12. Now, as always, when I'm adding or subtracting decimals, I need to make sure I bring down my decimal point in my final answer, including that decimal point. Now 124 and 2/10 is not my final answer. Now I need to add my widths together, which are my third and my fourth side length in this rectangle. And now I'm going to add these two numbers together. So the digits in my tenths place, I have 2 plus 2 is 4. In my ones, I have 2 plus 2 is 4. In my tens, I have 3 plus 3 is 6. Bringing down my decimal point, lining it up. Now my last step here is now I'm going to add both of my answers together to give me the final perimeter of this rectangle. Notice I took this into steps, which is absolutely fine. This is a process. The answer is not going to instantly come. You need to write this out so you are able to solve correctly. 4 plus 2 is 6. The digits in my ones place, 4 plus 4 is 8. Tens is 6 plus 2 is 8, and my hundreds is just a 1. Looking at my decimal point in my question and bringing it down to my answer. So now the final perimeter of this rectangle is 188 and 6/10 kilometers. Now, I know this is correct because I'm looking at my rectangle and just confirming that I included all 4 sides when I was adding these numbers together, giving me an answer of 188 and 6/10 kilometers. At any time during your activities today, I encourage you to rewatch this video. I have other videos as well on my YouTube channel involving perimeter with just whole numbers, but you are in 5th grade and I believe you are ready to apply the knowledge and the skills you learned from perimeter in 4th grade and now have perimeter involving decimals. When you are measuring things around your house, when you're measuring to see if you want to put a fence in your backyard, you're not always going to have whole numbers. You will have decimals and fractions as well, so it's important that you apply these skills to the content and the material that we're working with today.